Well, I think that Mr. Kennedy recognizes the old idiom from Daniel Patrick Moynihan, that he's entitled to his opinions, but not to his own facts. And I think if he's skeptical, I'm all for that. I think that the U.S. public health system certainly needs a swift kick in the rear to generate some new and exciting thinking to kind of bust the status quo. But certainly when it comes to vaccine skepticism, I think the solution isn't to promote science that's just wrong, but to ask for transparency and ask scientific agencies such as the FDA and the CDC and the NIH to put up or shut up and have robust conversations. But at the end of the day, science is science, and science changes. And I think that if one thing we learn from Mr. Kennedy's statements is science evolves, and what we learned from COVID is that science evolves. So if he's willing to accept accepted science presented by smart folks and move forward, I'm all for that. If he's going to go back and start repeating silly things like vaccines cause autism, then he has no place in government. But he's backed off from that. So I respect the fact that he recognizes that some of the things he said in the past were over the edge.
You know, Kennedy said he would give his son referral fees in legal cases against vaccine makers. Is that a conflict of interest?
Oh, it absolutely is. You know, and
many people see it as such. And
you know, when Senator Warren teed that up, you know, a couple of times, it's a fair question.
Yeah.
She got a bit of an evasive answer, but you know, being in government comes with responsibilities, and being in government comes with sacrifices. And one of the sacrifices that I think Mr. Kennedy will have to make is say, if I'm in government and I'm in charge of the people, I'm not going to be able to sue them after I leave government. He's got to accept that, nod his head yes, and move forward.
As you watch these confirmation hearings, I would imagine this is one that is probably one of the more interesting ones that we are watching.
Yeah, it's pretty boring. It's everybody's totally on script, which is unfortunate. You know.
Really? I mean, it seems like there's some back and forth.
There's some back and forth, but you know, if I was a Democratic member of the Senate and I'm sitting on these committees, you know, I'd like to hear about his views on dietary supplements, or on nutrition reform, or on staffing possibilities, as opposed to hammering on the same statements that he made that were embarrassing, that were untrue, that need to be addressed. But there are lots of things to talk about. You know, on the other side of the aisle, the Republicans had a lot of interesting questions to ask on a lot of interesting things. That unfortunately, but not surprisingly, kind of devolved into a political sports shoot.
Right. And, you know, when I talk to parents about what they're watching in these confirmation hearings, a lot of people are obviously worried about the health of their children, about vaccines. That is something that's really important. So if he is confirmed, what are some of the first things that we might see in changes for overall health of our children and for America?
Sure. Well, nutrition obviously comes to mind initially. You know, my kids eat a lot more junk food than they do get vaccinations.
Right.
But you know, if this is an opportunity to shine a bright light on the value of vaccines, that's terrific. Should we debate it? Yes. Should we reach consensus? We should. But let's talk about it. Let's not be afraid to talk about it. When you're afraid to talk about something, people only think that you're hiding things. But if I have kids, I want to hear about what they're eating. I want to hear about vaccines. I want to hear about pediatric trials for medicines for serious and rare diseases that affect kids. You know, a whole spectrum of important things.
Right. Open it up. Open it up. All right. Peter Pitts, former FDA Associate Commissioner under the Bush administration, and the president of the Center for Medicine in the Public Interest. Peter, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate your time.
Pleasure. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your screen. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.